Welcome, everybody. This is, what do we call this? Wild on wet, wet on wet watercolor technique. We're gonna go either with the small, lots of fishes, or we're gonna go with 2 medium-sized fishes, or we can do a really deep dive study of the big one. So this is the pomfret. This is a tuna and a salmon. So I did want to focus on edible fish. I mean, all fish is sort of edible, but this is the stuff we eat. And let me just quickly repeat. The color that I use is Hansa Yellow Medium, Beryllium Red, French Ultramarine, and Payne's Gray. You don't have to use these exact colors. If you don't have them, you can use similar, and we'll go with that. My paper is actually 100% cellulose paper. If you actually have more than one type of watercolor, I would suggest trying all of them. And then this is what, so what I'm going to do is do introduction of all of you guys at the end when you're painting, okay? Because then I can chop that off and you don't need to be seen in the recordings doing that. So this is what the words that I'm using, you may already know, is there'll be wet, there'll be the word damp, there'll be the word film, and there'll be some pooling, not ponding, but pooling. There'll be diffused, even sheen. This is just so you can, when I'm doing stuff, you can understand what I'm saying. And then the paper is a mixed pulp, or cellulose is another one. So basically cellulose is wood. Mixed pulp is when it's a bit of cotton, a bit of cellulose, which is not this. And then 100% cotton is sometimes, you know, you may have that paper, right? Then some of the words to describe some of the effects is lost, soft, hard, and then we may do some lifting. Okay. So at any time you need to ask a question, just do it. Just unmute yourself and ask. Okay. Cool. So let's go. So this is my play around page with small fishes. Let's let me do this. Move down here. So before we start, let's introduce the color. So you've got Hansa Yellow here. So in terms of watercolor use, I kind of like to premix a little bit of color that is already sort of juicy. So this is juicy here. And I tend to go from the lightest. So this is sort of like maybe it's like a discipline, you know, because if I go yellow and then I go black right away, my brush will just be dark. Or if you don't clean your brush enough, the next thing you dip into it, it will be dark. So I usually, when I do some mixing, I go with the lightest, clean my brush, and then I go to the next lightest. So would that be red or blue? One of them. So just sort of putting a mix here. So this is tea, coffee sort of mix. If you've not been to my class before, I call this the lightest mix, where you can still see the palette on the bottom as tea. So it's very, very watery. And then the next one, if you put more paint into it, becomes coffee. So coffee when it's less watery, it's more paint. And then it goes into cream. All right, sorry, it goes into milk first. So milk is definitely thicker than coffee. Just think of milkshake. And then the cream comes when you just go into this is all squeezed paint, right? And then you just put a bit of water here. That is kind of pretty much cream when it's very intense like this. So that's my last one. My gray is here. So the other thing I do is I clean my brush a lot, because it's a good habit to have, not to have a half unclean brush, which happens too, that's fine too. So what I do now, so now what I want to do is just put my color down. So I've got yellow. I'm gonna push myself down a little bit here so you can see it. Okay. So this is like a tea consistency yellow, but it's quite vibrant, right? If I put, and then I clean my brush, and then that brush somewhat damp. So I do this. I will just touch the edge of this blob, and then I pull it even more down. You get something very light. So that's kind of a really nice. So when I do this, do you see there's a sheen? So that's the even sheen we're talking about. Now that's kind of different than if I do a very thick, wet blob of red right now here. So that's, do you see that there's more shine on the red right there? Let me just put a bit more. So there's a pooling on this paper. Right, so that's what pooling is. So when it pulls, it tends to go one side or the other. So I'll tend to lift the paper. So if I let it pull to the right side, you can actually see it there. So if I clean my brush and get rid of all the paint, this is sort of wet, actually. This is not damp. So damp is when you take the brush out, you do this, and then you still also then you put it into a tissue, and then you take all the water out. This is called damp brush. So if my damp brush is put against the tip of this pooling color, let's see what happens. Just touch the tip of it, and then you see what happens. It just pulls all that color down. Right? So this can go, so if I clean my brush again and I don't dab it, it's still wet, and I keep going down onto here, I can still pull this color even more. And then I get this really nice faint red color. So now the blue, I'm gonna put the blue down. So this is quite thin. So if I just add a bit more color in here, so this is like a sort of like a thick, quite a strong tease, eh? And then if I put a very intense color on it like that, right in the middle, it starts to expand, right? So let me do that again. So this is kind of a thin but even sort of shine like this. And then I go back into the mix of the paint, and then I will just put it down onto the wet surface. You have this beautiful, slightly, well, that's very thick. So it will start to spread in this beautiful, in a beautiful way. So the edge is soft because everything is still wet. So just kind of do that and see what you get. So this is definitely more paint than that one. You can see it. Right? And while that's still shiny like that, it's still painting. So later on when it dries, it will look different than this. Right. So we can do a bit of yellow on the paper. And then I'll clean my brush again. I go into the red while the yellow is still wet. I'm gonna drop the red in the middle. So that's also wet on wet. Beautiful bloom. So that's kind of one. If I'll do another one, let's do another one like this on the right side of it. slightly bigger. Right, so what I'm doing here is I'm adding a lot of paint. So this is very wet. Can you see? Is it pool? It's not. It's wet, but it's even. So you've got even film. That's kind of what we aim to have, an even film. And then we clean the brush, we dip it into the red, and we're going to drop it again here. Boom. Do you see the difference between this, the first one and the second one? So see, the first one was more even and there's less wetness on the surface. So it tends to do this beautiful burst of color when the color gets dropped. Why does this one do this? Because the base color, the yellow, there was way more water already there. So when you drop the color on top, it starts to dance around more. And it doesn't bloom as nice, you know? It blooms, but a much slower pace, and it doesn't have that nice kind of an even burst of color. So that kind of tells you too much water on the bottom, on the first layer. The first wet was too wet. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I use that just as an analogy for, it's an example. So you don't have to have the base color can also be just water, but I thought I did it like this so that you can see the water, otherwise you can't see it here. So if I just do it with water, see if I can do it here. Can't see the water so much, but if I just do this, you can see the shine. There's too much shine and it's a bit kind of a, don't know if you can see, there's a pooling there, right? So what I want to do here is get rid of this pool of water first. So take all the wetness out of your brush. So this is now a damp brush. And what I do is I just put the tip of the brush on the tip of this. And what it does is it will suck some of this extra water out into the brush, and then you can get it off the page. So it's still some left. I'm going to continue to do some more until there's none left, until there's like a pool of, so an even film is what we want. Right, and you can sort of see it. You may have to do a little bit of this just to see. So now it's that even pool is slowly starting to dry. Let's go quickly, go into the red. So how much red do you put makes a difference too. So I have a lot of, it's almost going to drip down. It might be a bit too much. So I'll take some away. So you want to have just a nice kind of, you load it once. You don't want it to be dripping. And then you're just going to drop it in the middle. And then it does that. How nice is that? So magical. I love this. So that's the first drip. If I do another one, what happens? Let's see. Ooh. So you can do this a few times. And if you go into a really, really thick pigmented kind of mix and you drop that. So when the pigment is really thick and you put it down, you see how it doesn't spread as much. So you guys, please let me know if I'm moving too fast. And because I'm just going here, okay? So that's really nice, like a nice flower, right? And that's like 2 drops of tea and 1 drop of milk. Milk is in very thick paint right in the middle, so you get a nice flower. So for practice, this is the best way to practice, is to see what happens when you do a drop on a wet surface. Shall we try it again with a different color? Okay, brushes. So that's an example of a dirty brush. You see that? Dirty brush. That's okay. So let's do another one here. Even film. And then I'm gonna drop a blue in here. So this is T. And then I'm gonna do another drop of T. And then 10, 20 seconds later, go in with milk, which is very thick. So you go into the pigment. So my brush is pigmented here, and I'm gonna drop that milk in the middle. So that's not milk enough, right? Because it's still spreading. So let me put quite thick milk in the middle. If you can see, it does not move. So why is this spreading smaller than that one? Good question. It's because I think this one, when I put down the base wetness, it was a bit drier than that one. So this you can sort of, when you play around with it, you can diagnose, oh, why is it like that? Why does that happen? It's always fun to do. Okay. Okay, so this is something you can do repeatedly and make flowers, little box, and then do some flowers. Practicing your wet on wet drop. Yes. Gonna do the Payne's gray now. So what I'm doing is I'm trying all my paint because there are two brands, and some of the brands sometimes behave different. Okay, so that means, so I did the first drop didn't move anywhere very fast. Means there's too much water on the surface. So I do a second one. Same thing, it moves a bit more. There's more pigment, but it moves so much slower than that red one just now. Right, so now, what do I do? Can I do anything? Can I change it? Not really. At this point, you can't really change this. You just have to start it again, do another one. So let's do one last one, and then we can move on to the fish. So that's kind of nice and even film and quite dry, drier than that one. Let's do another drop of black, Payne's gray. Yeah, that one flows a bit more. Maybe I didn't have enough paint. Second one. Ooh, so nice. So then I'll wait another 30 seconds or so. I'm going to try and drop in another color, like a yellow or something. What happens if I do that? So I'm going to load in my yellow in a very thick cream consistency. I'm going to stick it in here in the middle. Ooh. Yeah, that works. Nice. Okay, well, next is, so the brush that I'm using is actually a botanical art brush. So it's actually doesn't hold that much water. It's it's quite pointy. And the body is quite slim. So there's not much water. It's supposed to. As opposed to the watercolor brush like this, you can sort of see the difference, right? One just can hold a lot more water, the other one doesn't. Okay, so next, are you all good?
Yeah.
Any questions? Just shoot anytime, okay? I'll blow it up against some here. Turn this one on. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my light a bit here. Oh, oops. Okay. Better. Okay. Cool. So I'm using a pencil and I'm just gonna the picture is very big. Don't fit on this. Okay, what I'm gonna do is gonna show you the picture on the screen instead of here. It's too small. Okay. That's small enough for you just to see. You don't need all the details, right? So let me just split like this. Okay. So you can do two, you can do one. Maybe I'll do two small ones so we can do two. So don't have to be perfect on the shape of this fish. Literally can just be very simple. And don't press too hard. So you want to have a very faint outline. Like that. I'll do another one here. So the eyes finally is just below half of the face. And here. And then what I would do is just to have, this is the, what do you call this? The fins, just put one shape. Okay. So it's good to just have a very faint pencil line. Don't have to be too thick. So what I'd like to do here is show you one of the technique from the video that I posted. So I'm going to use ultramarine. Okay, so this is quite watery ultramarine. Let me kind of mix a bit more. So what you want to mix is a nice sort of coffee consistency. So it's kind of a nice, even, juicy, quite pigmented, but juicy kind of color. So like this is sort of the consistency we want. Like this. This is nice like this, right? So if you have something less, a bit more faint than this, then you want to just add a bit more paint. So juiciness means it's kind of like when you put it down, it goes smoothly goes and very evenly. It's going to spread itself evenly. You see this? So there's a pulling on here. So sometimes when I have a pulling, I would try to smooth it out. This is the consistencies roughly that we want. The paint. So now what I want to do, I don't want to waste that paint that is in here. So what I'd like to do now is just put this whole brush in the water, but I'm not going to move it up and down. I'm just adding more water into the brush. And then with that, I'm going to go everywhere. So this is becoming drier. That's okay. So I'm not adding more paint at all. I'm just adding more water and more water. So as you end up at the bottom, you'll have a lot less paint. supposedly. Then I think I'm just going to carry on with the paint by adding, just continuously adding water to the whole thing. So it's starting to become less and less blue until you hit the bottom here. So this is the first layer. Right now, time is of the essence. So what I want to do is clean my brush and then I'll go in a second time. What I want to do is I'm going to stop about halfway of the fish here. But I would paint the whole thing down. Right, so from up here, we're going to go a second layer. Wet on wet. And then you stop about there. About half of the fish. So notice if it's wet on wet, you shouldn't have very hard edges. The edges should be soft. This is a little bit uneven. You want to have a soft edge. And then down here, this is the wetter part. That's already getting drier. This is a little bit wetter. We can do a second one here. So that's nice. Look at that. It will spread beautifully. Go down about half. And then there's actually some blue just down below here, right? So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of a blob there and then a bit of a blob here. So depending on how dry or how wet it is, it's going to do something. So it's spreading at the tail end of the brush. The front one is getting a little bit hard there. So if you don't want that and you want it a bit more soft, clean brush, damp, or dab it off. And then what you want to do is push some of the edges here outwards like that. So you have a diffusion. Oh, that's another word. Diffusion down here. And then your diffusion here. And I'm going with the contour shape of around the eye of this fish. Yeah, like that. So notice I'm not doing it very carefully. This is the idea about wet on wet, is you're just gonna have to let the paint do its thing. I know that the color is not quite right because the fish is a bit more turquoise, but that's okay. So this is all now beginning to dry, right? But it's still damp. So while we're here, I want to kind of add this blackish darkest tip up here. So let's see what happens. This is a little bit dry already. I'm going to add the top fin here. So you can sort of see when it starts to become hard, the edges becoming hard, that means that's too dry already. But you see how that's actually a film and it's quite wet, right? The tip. So what I want to do now is have a damp brush and pull that towards the front. So that softens it a tiny bit into the body of the fish. Yeah. Like that. I'll do the same here. So this one is a little bit wetter, I can tell. So I can potentially add another layer of dark. So that does the same thing as the flower earlier. It starts to diffuse once you drop it in the tip. It's diffusing towards the wet area, wet shape. So if you want to have a diffuse fin, don't even paint what you do is you drop the color into the most intense part of that fin, which is the tip here. So now I just done it, and that's way too dry. And you can coax it over a little bit. I think that looks much better than that one. Right, well, so I'm gonna check. Oh yeah, that's still kind of nice and damp. So I'm gonna just do the same here. Just drop a color at the tip. And what you want to do is you can even just tilt it downwards a bit like this. So the paint will move down. And then I'll go into the red. This one. Here is the red. So right now, if I'm just going to touch this, this is all damp, 80% dry, still 20% damp. So if you want to diffuse fin of this pinkish diffusion, it's not going to work because this is basically too dry now. So the way I would do it is to focus on just the fin and just use a wet brush to re-wet just that shape. So this is where you can play around with it. How much do I put there? What degree of wetness do I want? I want it to be even. So if there's any pooling, I should get rid of that pool of water. Right, so now in the entire part of this fish, the only thing that's active and wet is just the fin. So if we go into the red, water down the red a little bit, and you can then drop it in the front here, like that, right? So this is tea, so it's quite diluted. You see how it starts to push itself into the tip. You don't have to do very much. You just watch it go. Well, what if it stops and I want it to continue? Well, just wait. Maybe it would stop and then it's weird because I wanted to continue a little bit more, right? So what do I do there? Clean my brush. Take the water out so you've got a damp brush. You can use the tip here. But actually, do I need to? Yeah. I need to help it a little bit. So I need to then start pulling a little bit of this color. Let's see. This is tricky because it also takes some of the paint off when I do that. But it doesn't, if you don't push it down too hard, you pull it across a little bit like that. Then it starts to diffuse a bit more. So if you want to do it here, down here as well, you can do the same thing. Just wet the area you want the pink to go. And activate that. So I think I want to activate it all the way down here too. Right? And you don't want to just stop there because you want the diffusion to be more bigger. So I would wet the entire fin down here, even though I'm only just going to work on that. I'm going to activate all the way to the tip of the fin. So that's my activated shape is there like that. Right? And it looks like it's not even. So I want to even that out. Take my brush and even this out. Then put a bit of red And this is basically what you do. You just drop it tiny bit across. And then a little bit in the front. And then a little bit there. Actually, there's actually a pink there, but I did not activate this area, so I don't want to do that. It's just going to leave a weird hard mark. So I'm just doing this. Then while this is still activated and that's still damp, I'm going to go to the black or the Payne's gray and try to diffuse it from the tip down. Then with a damp but clean brush, I'm going to try and diffuse it a bit. And then pull this down into the body of the fish. A bit more there. So this is what's called a hard edge, what is happening here. So I don't want that. So while this is still a little bit wet, a little bit damp, I'm going to turn it around and try to pull it that way. Try and get a lost edge. So I'm going to try to lose this edge that way. Same thing with up here. That's too harsh. So I'm just going to push some of this edge into itself. Tricky, no? This is really hard edge. Don't like that, but that's okay. Can I play around with this too? See, I'm trying to mess around with this. It doesn't work. Forget about it. Okay, so I've got a second one. We can do that second one. So this is one technique, quite concentrated and quite technical. We can also do something more freeing and wild. It doesn't have to be this. This is the carefully try to control everything kind of technique. But let's just leave it there. So what I want to do now is trying to lift some of the colors from. So we want to leave just the fish blue and not the background. Right? So this is already dry. What I want to do is turn this around here. And I could still see the edge of the fish. I clean my brush and I dab excess water off it. So this is now dry-ish, damp, right? But it's clean. So now I'm going to try and lift some of this paint off the edge of the fish. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to lift the paint off the top. You see how it's starting to lift? So this requires you to probably push down your brush down a little bit more like this and pull across. So now that's already less blue is on the top there. So you can do this a few times. So this requires for the paper to be good enough to do this. Right? And then as I do that, I'm trying to pull more paint away. If you have good paper, you don't have to rub too hard. It should lift quite nicely because this blue. And when you do lift it in this movement, you're not going to get a harsh sort of line. It's softly disappearing like that. So I'm going to do it here too on the tip. So essentially what this is you're kind of bleaching it out by taking that paint back up with water. And you can do it a few times. being mindful of the edge of the fish. So now the fish is coming out, right? So I'll turn it back up here and I'm going to try and diffuse this part of it. So I will change the angle of my camera a little bit so you can sort of see what I am doing. So cleaning the brush, dabbing excess, and then pulling it from here upwards. So sometimes you actually want to have a lot more water in your brush than you think, because you need that to push the color up into your brush. So this is why when we first started, we want to have a coffee consistency, a little darker color, so that you can actually do this job here more satisfyingly. Because if your first layer is too light, it won't be as satisfying. So now it's all bleached up there and the fish is coming out. So there is a bit of pink there. You can add that in if you like. So you can also take some of the blue out of the tip of the fins here. Right? Be careful with this when you're doing this, because these are two separate areas. This is the background area. This is the foreground. If you mix them up, when you put the pink will bleed all the way there. So this is a tricky business here. But you can then drop the drop the pink down here ever so lightly, and you've got a pink fin back there. So I find this method a little easier to do than if you want to just do the fish without the background, but we can also try to do that. So here you can sort of see that my blue is actually very straight, and what we want is actually a blue that's more curved like this. Right, so it's a little bit stiff in terms of the shape of the blue color. So what we want is a blue that's going like this. Into the back. Right? So I'm trying to put the wet area to activate that blue area back up there again. So this is activating the top, and we're going to try and add another layer of blue in there. In that shape. See what happens. Nothing. Nothing. So this is wet, and then wet again on top in a curve shape. Right, and what I'm going to do now is carry on into the fin up here too. So darken everything, including fin. So now I have this nice curve that I didn't have before. So there's also, if you notice, a curve down here going up like this. Okay, let me do it again. The shape that goes up like this, right? Actually, that also includes a little bit in the front here too. So this is me activating certain parts of it to try and add a bit more color. So now that's all activated in that shape. Down here, let's drop some color. So that's very wet. And drop some color here. So messed up a little bit there, but that's okay. We always clean it up. So now I have a bit more volume. The fish looks like it has a curve on the body, a bit more. Yep. So then, of course, there's the tail also. So if you want to do the tail, you could do the same thing as we did here. You activate the shape of the tail that you want to do a wet on. So that's my tail activated. And then you can drop the paint spray onto it like we did before. And then I don't use the brush too much. I just use the brush to drop the color in. And then I'm gonna just push it down. So whatever's not wet, it won't fill. So now there's too much black. We can then just suck some of this out with a clean, damp brush in the direction of the middle of the fish, like this. So this is making a lost edge again. And then you want to just push it all the way up into with a clean brush and soften all that edge. So my fish has like a bit of a hump here. Looks more like a piranha rather than a pomfret. So what happens if I try to fix this shape? I can basically take off a bit of that body by lifting it. So I'm shaving off the top here. So this is something you can do if you want to just reshape the fish a little bit. Same technique, push down the brush. No paint, just water. That's better. Still has a hump. Okay. Same thing here. You can also do some lifting here. Woohoo. I am actually working this brush quite hard on the surface because you do want to lift a lot of that out. So this is where a good tip of your brush will help get your little corners like this very nice and clean. Yeah. Woo. Let me know if you have any questions or any issues. So sometimes I also do this. You see what I'm doing? I'm actually kind of agitating the paper a little bit because this also is another way to lift. And when you do this, you get this sort of like a little water flowing shape from the brush. And try that. Right now, if your paper kind of doesn't like this and it starts to behave, starts to be angry and it doesn't like it, then stop. Don't do it because you don't want to ruin your paper. So same thing. This is also too straight, but I won't do that right now. How's it going?
Oops. I
Making
like
a
it that
mess.
I think can go back and hum the fish. It's quite interesting. Put the fish into a like curve. Redraw.
Sorry, repeat that again. What?
I mean, I like that if the fish shape is not quite what you want, you can go back and wet
Yes.
it and redraw it. Yeah,
Yes.
that's nice.
Absolutely. That's the thing. A lot of us is thinking, oh, but it's watercolor. What if I mess it up? You can always fix it. You can always take away a lot more than you think. And that's part of the fun of lifting is also sometimes you can fix things and
Yeah.
undo things, but it requires to have a good hardy paper, 300 GSM paper, because you want it to be able to stand all that. See now, if I look at this, this is all dry now. You can sort of see what happened. So the French ultramarine is granulating, meaning on the paper, this is very flat and this is very, very textured. It's because the paint is granulating. It tries to separate from each other, the pigment. So it's beautiful. So that's a flat one. This is flat. This is granulating. And you can see here, when it dries, it looks really nice and different. Each one is different. This one, my water is a little bit contaminated, right? But it's quite nice actually. So pulling, diffuse, even sheen, wet, damp, a film. I think we talked about that. So I pretty much have kind of covered this range of words. So finally, you want to be wild or go really fun and have fun with your thing. You don't have to be so clearly have to put the paper on. Just go directly into the paint like this. So I'm gonna do a nice mix of blue. And then I'm gonna add a bit of the Payne's gray. Sorry. Hold on. Put a bit of the Payne's gray into the blue. So I've got, when you do that, what you get is this nice navy color. Slightly darker navy. Then I can add a little bit of the red in there. So you've got a slight purplish. And then you can do 2 different brushes. So this is got paint on it. This is still dry. So I'm going to put some, and wet this brush. So what I want to do is, so this is normally what I like to do when I don't want to waste any paint that is hanging around here. So I tend to try to water down all the paint together. So I've got this watered down watery brush. So this is what I'm going to do to make a fish. So I'm going to do the pomfret, but I'm going to do really loose. So this water is a little bit dark. I think you can sort of see it, but you can see the wet, right? So I'm just going to do a shape of just watercolor, just direct watercolor, and just wet. So I'm going to move really fast here. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute and just let you watch this. Okay, so this is my wet fun thing. So I'm trying to move out all the paint, all the water into the shape that I want. But I have to move fast because everything is getting drier. And then I'm going to just drop the blue on the top. That. And then I'll just did 1, 2. I don't touch it again. I will go up here because the top there needed a color. And then I will just go all the way to the tip and then lift. So when I do that, see what happens? It comes into the tip and then it comes back in again. That's it. Don't touch it, leave it, right? Same thing here. There's a tip here that is still wet. So I'm just going to do that. If I want to add a bit more black, darker color, I'll just drop a color in there. So to me, this is the essence of watercolor. This is what you actually want to be brave enough to do and not do it too carefully. Because this will show that there's more vibrancy and the color will move in a way, your confidence move. So just now you just go push, push, don't touch it. If you see lots of the really, really famous watercolor master artists, this is what they do all the time. This is all they do. They just go push, 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 and then destroy many, many, many painting because that's how it works. So now, if you look at this, this is dry up here, and this is getting still wet down here, right? So if I want to put the fins in here, it might go everywhere. So what I can do is, again, damp brush, put it across here, and I'm going to just lift that space for the fin. Lift the blue for the fin. So when I'm doing that, I take the paint off as well as drying it a little bit. So same thing here. If you want to, you can just lift this bit area that you want to put the pink in, you can put it there. Here is already kind of dryish up here. And then you can, if you want to, also continue here a little bit. And trying to push some of this color. But this, I do this mindful of the shape of the tail. So if the tail is shaped like this, then I'll move in this way. All right, and now you can sort of put a bit of the fin in here. Ooh, it's so dry. So that's okay. That's a bit dry. So what I'm going to do is, that was a lot of paint just now. So I'm just going to slowly move it up. There's a dot here. Let me get rid of that. Yep. So I have a dot there. That's fine. Just leave it. So same thing here. I'm gonna just take a bit of the paint off here. Put a bit of pink in there. So now I don't worry too much. I'm gonna put the pink eye down in the front here too. So you can also just lift the eyeball out, and then I would leave that to dry before I put in the black, otherwise it will spread everywhere. So give that a try. It's quite fun. So double-handed is what my suggestion is. Right? And then you can you can be free. Free fish shape. So I can also just be, you can play with this. And so this is just a very simple fish shape, like a fish cracker. Doesn't have to be all fancy like that. And then just drop this in. I only just did it once. Whatever I get, that's it. And then I didn't have the fin, right? But I still have the blue color, so I will try and put the blue fin in here like this. And down the bottom here. So I'll start with there. Sorry, don't think you can see it. I'm gonna start here. And then I'll pull it in. And then this is still wet, so when I do that, see what happens? Oh no. What? It's okay. What do I do now? What? That's fine, just leave it. You see, this is sometimes a lot of the panic comes from like, what if I don't want it there? That's fine. You know you can lift this, so we can lift it later. Sometimes the worst thing you can do is mess around with it when you kind of didn't have to. You know? So this is now quite wet, right? You can see that it can actually still diffuse itself to the left. So I can just pull this to the front to add extra shape to the bottom of the fish. The front of the fish looks a bit dry here, which is okay. So you can also sometimes do a negative painting of the eyeball by not painting it. No problem. So the shape is pretty bad here, right? But that's okay. That was the idea, was to have confidence, even if it's wrong. Then go back to a very small brush if you want to do the eyeball. That's already dry, so let's do the eyeball here. And here. So need to work on this for all the other stuff that's happening, but never mind, leave that first. Looks more like a puffer fish. So that's it. That's kind of the gist of it. So if you want to reactivate the tail here, totally easy to do. I reactivate it and pull some of this color back up. So wet on wet is such a fun technique because you can play around with taking away, putting it on, activate the color, put it back up, right? There's a bit more here. Fins there. drop in. So that was a wet. So this one, I took it off. This one, I'm wetting the shape of the fins and I'm dropping the pink into it and letting it happen by itself. All right. So which one do you prefer doing? This way or this way? There's no wrong answer. What's the preference of everyone?
I've never done the first one before. So it's quite interesting.
This one. Yeah.
The first one, the lifting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the second one have to work very fast.
Yes. The second one, you can't hesitate. You're just gonna go for it. It builds confidence. So if you can do a bunch of this, it builds confidence in just your movement as well. That's why I kind of like a fish, because it's very nerve-wracking actually. Because what if I get the shape wrong? Doesn't matter. Doesn't really matter, right? And it gives you that movement. You gotta go this way, gotta go this way, so there's a lot of things that you practice in just making a fish. So this one, I actually did it like that, like this. So it's all wet, and then while it's still quite damp, I went in with the color, so it's starting to all bleed through like this. And what I like about it, it gives it the glow. So they're all kind of glowing, but that's kind of yeah, I kind of like that. Whereas this one, I waited a little longer so that I can then control a lot of the shape up here. This is all wet on wet. So, and then you wait until it's dry and then you add all the dark dots and details and stuff. And yeah. Anyone else? Which one do you prefer? Do you have another way to do it? Maybe if you think of another way to do it, I'd like to see that.
Are we finished with the first two?
It's a lot of lifting.
Sorry, what's the question?
No,
Are we done with the first two?
So we are not done with the first two.
Oh, okay.
But I'm gonna leave it here because the idea is for you to just experience the wet on wet. You can carry on working on your fishes. So these two, I did it the same way. So you can do the second one the same way. And I don't recommend adding like a black outline later, but of course you can. But the idea is this is the practice of painting quite wet and just watercolor as the base of the painting rather than an outline, a very dark outline. That's what I recommend.
Okay.
I cheated a lot.
Oh yeah? How?
A lot of lifting.
Yeah. Yeah, the lifting is quite fun. It also gives you ways to, how do I lift this side? How do I, and you turn the page around.
A lot of lifting, a lot of I haven't done this in a while, by the way, so
yeah.
a
Fun.
lot of lifting, a lot of what do you call it? Shifting the colors around.
Yep.
That's the only way I can describe.
Yep.
Kind of waiting for some parts to dry, going back in, and then mixing things back in. Well, I'm using 100% cotton wool.
Okay.
So you can do a lot of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And
What's the biggest takeaway here right now?
Purposely leaving harsh lines on me.
Purposely leaving harsh lines?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. That's
to try to get the definition.
Yes. that works too. So
Yeah.
this, you know, at this stage, on both stage, you can carry on now adding all the detail, which I feel like most people can already do.
I'm done with 2 fish.
Yeah, you've done it. Cool.
Yeah. I should leave it before I mess it up.
Right, so I'm gonna open up to everyone, and if you want to show your work, please do. I'm gonna go back to gallery. Anyone want to show your fishes?
Let me add the eye. Okay.
You found? Okay, I think you might need to unfilter yourself.
Yep. Hang on.
Lovely.
Nice.
Nice. Awesome. That's really cool.
Okay, none.
Anyone else? Okay, hold on. Let me pin you. Wow. Cool. That's quite big too.
That's what I meant. I cheated a lot.
I like that. That's kind of glowy, and the pomfret is nice too.
Yeah, I
Wow,
use a lot of tissue
it's
paper.
very pink. Yeah.
And lifted
Great.
a lot.
Great.
So I said I cheated.
Anyone else? Sharon?
Hi.
Hi. Want to show?
Well, I didn't really quite, try the first one dark enough. So
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
felt I need to do it a bit darker so I can do a bit more
Yeah.
lift off.
Yeah.
nice.
The
Okay.
second one,
Okay.
it's more something I'm
The
familiar
small
with.
one.
So
Yep. That's great.
yeah, I
And
kind
you
of like
know,
that. I like
the
the
fins
colors
don't have to
blend
be
together.
the same color, right? So you're adding slightly different colors. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely.
Fun. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jen Jen?
Yeah, I'll show I like the second one. So let me see.
Yep.
Not blur my Look, can you see?
Ooh, filtered.
I shouldn't blur my background. I should just
Yeah, there you go. Let's see. Oh, yep. Oh, nice. You got like a lot of diffusion there.
Yeah, it doesn't have the outline actually.
Yeah, I don't think it needs it. So what you can do is try to add more values, more dark values into it. That was good. It's a
Oh,
good start. Yeah, that's very nice.
okay.
Lovely. Anybody? Oh, yes. Hold on, please. Nice. Very nice. Yep.
I haven't done any of the details.
Yeah.
But the second one I did without drawing because I didn't know we were supposed to draw 2 fishes.
Okay, that's fine. You're
Yeah.
not supposed to do anything, so you can just do it freehand. Yeah, nice.
This is
I
the
think you
loose
got a nice diffusion there as well, and you got your pink, kind of nice, intense pink
Yeah.
on the
the
fit
mouth.
there. That's
Look at
really
the
good.
mouth. Looks
Yeah.
so kissable.
Oh yeah. Very pink lips. Awesome.
How
Really.
do you do the
And
glow? You were saying that you make the fish glow. How do you do the
oh,
glow?
the glow. So the glow is when, let me just do a quick one. Maybe hold on. So the glow is wet on wet. So assuming this is the wet spot, I just do a really quick one. Okay, then this is on like random paper. So wet surface. So this is not the paper that I used before. This is the back of the paper. So you see what happens? It's kind of not the best paper, but this is kind of what I did in the beginning to have a wet surface background first. And then I use a pencil. So I did the pencil before, but let me just do it on here like this real quick. You can actually draw with the regular 2B pencil on a wet surface.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm just gonna do a real quick fish there. Right, and so this is still wet. And is it even in? So I want to wait until it's kind of even. And on but not like pulling. So this is still a bit too wet. So I'm going to wait about 10-20 seconds. And then what you can do is I'm going to add, purposely, I'm going to add more color so you can see. Okay, so I'm going to wait a little bit longer now because this is also, the paper doesn't, it's kind of drying and uneven. You can sort of see here, right? Some bits of the body is already drying and some bits are not. So let's see what happens. So around at this point, then I'm just going to drop a color in like this. So what happens is that it's starting to glow outwards of the line. And sometimes I sometimes do it on purpose where I just go outside of the line a little bit. Like that. So that's where the glow comes from. And then down here. So this is the most freeing because you don't have to be so precise at all. Actually, you don't have to be precise at all. And then I'm going to add another blue color right on this. So it's almost like you don't have to wait until it's a little bit dry at this point. You can keep adding color.
Susan, can I
Yep.
ask a question?
Sorry?
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
So this wet on wet, is it suitable for only one subject kind of drawing? Like one object? Or do
No. Wet on wet can work with landscape. It can work with urban sketching. It can work with still life. It can work with people. It just depends what you want to do. So see how it's starting to diffuse outwards. So that's the glow that we're talking about. So at this point, you're going to want to leave that glow there until it's fully dry before you kind of go into the details. Because if it's still wet, it's just going to keep diffusing all the time. So first layer is wet. Wait till it has an even film. Second layer is the glow. And then you wait until it dries completely before you can then go into all the details, like, with different colors and stuff. So all this diffusion is the paper doing its own thing. It's not purposeful, right? This is all naturally, it just happens. Same as this. So no, wet on wet, you can totally test it out on all the subjects, whatever subject you want, actually. Most people use wet on wet as a background color. Yeah, I don't actually have an example. But sometimes it's the best when you want something really beautifully diffused, especially when it's like a light coming from behind a tree in a forest, for example. You want that to come down really smooth before you start adding all the details. So I would recommend trying this method. So this is obviously the beginning methods, but it's also not that beginner, I don't think. This is quite fun and scary. The fun, right? I call it terrifying and fun. So I would totally try it on anything. So this is beginning to dry completely. Yeah. Any other questions or last minute questions? If not, I will leave it there. So yeah, I will send you all the recordings either tomorrow or the day after. Is that cool?
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and I'll send you the picture as well of all the demos with the recording information.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please also send
Thank
pictures
Thank
of
you.
those temples that you've drawn earlier.
Yes, I will. I'll send all the fish. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, there was a
Good
pooping
night,
accident.
everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Yufang. Thank you for coming.
Bye.
you. Good night.
See you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.